The Rasi chart is the first of the Varga charts, the first of the many Varga charts. And that's one thing to always keep in mind. The Rasi chart is the first Varga, and that in fact it is a Varga. There's a tendency for us astrologers to look at the Rasi chart as separate from the Vargas, but it's not. It's the first Varga. Parashara makes this really clear when in the chapter on the Vargas, and he gives the effects of all 16 Vargas, he says, from Rashi, the physique, or the body. From Hora, Sampad, which means accomplishment and material well-being. Drakana, happiness from siblings. So he gives all the results of the Varga charts, but he starts out with Rashi, physique. And so the Rashi chart has to do with the body. And that includes your body and everyone else's body in your life. And because of that, it can be used for other bodies as well. That's why we can actually make successful predictions using the Rashi chart about your spouse or significant other, for example. Because by judging the seventh house, that's the seventh sign from the ascendant, that's the body of the spouse. So we can look at it in that context. But it won't be complete to analyze everything in life, marriage life, extent of wealth, and so on, just from that Rashi chart. It is a Varga, and it has its focus area. And that focus area happens to be a very broad area, so it does touch on other areas, but it's not the say-all, end-all of everything. It is one of many Varga charts. It's a single chart out of many. So you can't use the Rashi chart to do everything with, which many astrologers attempt to do. So, with that said, though, the Rasi chart is the most important Varga chart. Why is it the most important? Well, because it's the chart from which all the other Varga charts are created. It's the first chart, it's the beginning chart. And also, it's the chart we use as a reference plane to measure everything else. When we are dealing with astrology, what we're really dealing with is we're dealing with the space surrounding the person at birth, and that is called the local space. And I actually have a video on local space, which you should definitely listen to if you haven't already. So we have the space surrounding a person at their place of birth. Then we measure everything in that space, the planets, the bhavas, the horizon, everything in that space, pranapada, gulika, tons of other little weird things that the Hindu astrologers of old used to calculate. We measure all the things in that local space, and we measure them in the context of a constant factor. And what is that constant factor? The constant factor is the Rashi chart. And why is the Rasi chart the constant factor that we have? Why is it a constant factor? Because the Rashi chart is created by the apparent motion of the sun around the earth. And the motion of the sun around the earth, or in actuality the motion of the earth around the sun, that's the single most consistently steady astrological factor there is. And that's why we say the sun is steadfast, and the sun rules continuance and continuity, and those steady qualities, and why the sun is square. Square symbolizes steadiness and steadfastness. Because the motion of the sun, the apparent motion of the sun around the earth, is the most single constant factor up there in our local space, up there in the heavens surrounding us. And so that's what's used to measure everything else. The moon is traversing through the nakshatras as an example of something that is very fickle. One time the moon will go through a nakshatra in 21 hours, and another time it could take 25 hours. So the moon is very inconstant in its speed, and also in its latitude. It jumps up and down in latitude so much that one of the names of the moon is the rabbit marked, because it bounces across the heavens like a rabbit. But the sun's not like that. The sun is the steady, consistent factor. And so we use the zodiac, the 12 signs of the sun, the 12 zodiacal rashis, which are created or related to the sun, in order to measure everything else. So the Rashi chart's important because it is that It's that consistent measurement that we measure everything else by. Okay? And that's an important thing to keep in mind. We use the Rasi chart as a foundation to measure everything else, as a reference point, a reference plane for everything else. So everything that we measure is taken to zodiacal coordinates for the most part. Okay? And and that's why it's important. That's why whenever you look in the chart, you'll see everything in the chart arranged and according to degrees in its Rashis. Okay? Now, standardly, you're just going to see the Rasi chart with the 7 planets and Ketu and Rahu in there. And then the Lagna marked as well. And that's the very, very beginning use of that. If we have the Lagna marked in the Rasi chart, and we have the planets in there, then we can read everything about the individual's deha, his physique, his body, his physical well-being. And also, deha also means where one's body is. Okay? So it's not just your body, but the path that your body's on. Okay? That's why the Rasi chart has really a lot of importance for determining who the body is in this lifetime. Meaning, is the body a carpenter or is the body a doctor? Those are all things that relate to deha, the body, the physique, the self. It's that whole person and what they're about is what the Rasi chart focuses on. Okay? Problems with the body can be shown, as well as strengths with the body, congenital weaknesses that they're born with, and also strong constitutional points. All those types of things are indicated by the body. And that's what we look at when we see the Rasi. Now, the body will be involved with various things, okay? And it'll be involved with everything in life. It'll be involved with wealth. It'll be involved with relationships. It'll be involved with friends. It'll be involved with its mother, with its father, and so on. But different bodies will be involved more with those things to different and lesser degrees. So from the Rasi chart, we also can determine the level of involvement with those things. But that doesn't equate to level of success, okay? For instance, this person here with the Capricorn Lagna has his Lagna Lord Saturn placed in the 7th house, the house of relationships for one. So right away we know this person's going to have a lot of relationship involvement in their life. Is that relationship involvement going to be happy or unhappy? That's a completely different consideration. All we can see right now is based on that they'll be strongly involved in that thing. So whatever house the Lagna's Lord in is obviously a house where the body is going to be strongly involved. So that person is going to be involved in that thing. Their body will be connected to 7th house affairs a lot. Okay. Now in this person's chart, we have it in Cancer, the sign of foreign travels and overseas journeys and things like that. And Saturn happens to represent, or 7th house happens to represent distant places. So Lagna Lord in 7th is going to certainly, in Cancer, is certainly going to involve this person in lengthy foreign journeys and so on in their life. Long-term foreign travels and things of that sort. Okay, they'll be involved in that stuff. How will that stuff go? Well, from there we have to predict it and use a lot of, analyze all the planets and see what's happening. The point I want to make is the Rasi chart will show what the body is involved with, but it's not going to give all the answers for the level of success right away. It just lets us see what they're involved with, which is the place to start, okay? Now, there's also lots of other dehas in a person's life. They have their mother, their father, and so on and so on. Okay, how do we read those? Well, commonly an astrologer would go, well, the mother's the 4th house. Aries is the 4th from the Lagna. So we'll look at the mother from Aries. And the father is the 9th house, which is Virgo here apparently in the Rasi chart. And we want to read the father therefore from Virgo. Well, that's not entirely true, okay? That's really not an appropriate way to use the Rasi chart. What the Rasi chart is for is to show us where everything is placed in the context of the Rashis. And it's also there to show us the spatial, not the spatial so much, but the relative arrangement between the two planets, between different planets. So Saturn and Jupiter, say, both in Cancer, are what's in a conjunction. Why are they conjunct? Because they're both in the same sign. Simple. Then, from Saturn and Jupiter, we have Rahu and the Moon in the second, Mars in the fourth, Sun, Mercury, and Venus in the fifth. So whenever we want to see how far something is from something else, we use the Rasi chart. Okay, everyone knows that. But we also use the same to see how far it is from the ascendant. From the ascendant Capricorn, Saturn or Jupiter are in the 7th house. The Moon and Rahu are in the 8th. Mars is in the 9th house. Sun, Mercury, and Venus are in the 11th house. Well, that's common terminology, and that's not surprising anyone, and you're wondering why I'm making this a point. Well, 2 points I want to make. One point is that when we use the word house, that's a very vague term. If we really wanted to use appropriate language, we would say Saturn and Jupiter are in the 7th Rashi from the ascendant. And Rahu and Moon are in the 8th Rashi from the ascendant, because that's really what they are. They're in the 8th Rashi from the ascendant. And that word house is a house that's sort of been brought over from Western astrology. Although sometimes they do use the term griha in Vedic astrology to represent a Rashi. So when griha means house or place, but particularly, it specifically means a house. So that context of house can be used in terms of Rashi. In fact, one astrologer says that Rashi, house, etc. all mean the same thing. So we could say Saturn and Jupiter in the 7th house from here. But where that gets confusing is that in Western astrology, when they talk about a house, they mean something completely different. In Western astrology, when they talk about a house, they mean calculating specific houses, and those houses have a beginning and an end point. And then things could change. Okay? How can they change? Well, if we look up here where it says camp, this is a Campania's Bhava chart, or a Campania's house chart. And here you'll see some of the planetary placements are different. In the Bhava chart, from Capricorn, the Sun is falling in the 10th place. Okay, not the 11th place like it was in the Rasi chart. From Capricorn, Mars is falling in the 9th place, not where it was, not in the 10th where it was in the Rasi chart. Saturn in the Rasi chart's in the 7th from the ascendant. In the Bhava chart, it's in the 6th from the ascendant. Okay, so you can see now that we've got these differences of what's happening, it can set us up for a lot of confusion, and so it's really important we sort of know what we're talking about when we say something. Okay, so this house chart, as you see it here, is not a worthy thing. Okay, putting Saturn in the 6th from the ascendant isn't going to help you. Considering Mars in the 9th from the ascendant is not going to help you. One of the big thing astrologers have always tested is, well, what should I use? Should I use this Rasi type chart, or should I use a Bhava or house type chart to determine my planetary placements? People who've researched it have pretty much all come to the same conclusion that the Rasi chart seems to work better. Okay? And that's my opinion as well. When we want to see a position of a planet from the ascendant, or from any other point for that matter, we just simply count that position based on Rashis. And this idea that a Bhava is something like this chart shows that a planet can be in is an erroneous concept, because it goes against the very point of what a Bhava is. Okay? What is a Bhava? A Bhava means the existing concrete thing. And when you think about it, that makes the Bhava, when it comes to predictive astrology, the most important thing you can imagine. Because when we're doing predictive astrology, we want to predict a concrete event, an occurring concrete event. Well, that's what Bhava is. Bhava is the concrete occurring thing that actually exists. Okay? Astrologers all work with the first Bhava point, which is the Lagna point, in this chart at 20 degrees and 53 minutes. And that's the actual concrete existing person, their body. Then we take that point and we calculate that point's Navamsha to get the Navamsha Lagna. And we use that point. And we do that in all the Varga charts. And every astrologer uses that Lagna point like it's critical. And it is critical because it determines the beginning point in each chart for that individual that you're looking at their chart. Because the Lagna is that concrete individual. And so that concrete individual in the Rasi charts at 2053 Capricorn, in the Navamsha chart, that concrete individual falls in Cancer. Okay? So we use that. But then astrologers, if they want to read, say, about the mother or something, they'll go to the 4th and read it from Aries. And in the Navamsha, they'll do the same thing. They'll go from Cancer, in the Lagna, in the Navamsha, they'll go to Libra and say, well, Libra is the mother. No, it's not. Okay, that's where we make mistakes. Just as a person uses the Rasi chart to determine where the first Bhava point is, we need to do that for all the Bhava points, because a Bhava is that concrete existing thing. And it's not a big place. It's not a place that you could stick something in. It's a concrete existing thing. It's a point in space. So just like this ascendant here is a point in space at 2053 Capricorn that we calculate in the Navamsha, and which we calculate in the Saptamsha, and which we calculate in the Drekana, and which we calculate in all the Varga charts, we need to do that for all the other existing concrete things as well. Okay, we just don't need to do it for the Rasi chart, for the Lagna, but for all the concrete bhavas. So how do we do that? Well, let me show you. We go to chart screen options and we show Bhava, Chalita, Cusp, and all Vargas. Now, what we've got here is all these Bhava cusps falling in the Rasi chart. Why do we want them falling in the Rasi chart? Well, the same reason we want the planets to fall in the Rasi chart. Because the Rasi chart gives us is the foundation chart that we use as the reference plane for all the points we're going to look at. Okay? So, in this chart, the first Bhava falls in Capricorn. The second Bhava falls in Aquarius. The third Bhava falls in Aries. The fourth Bhava falls in Taurus. The fifth and sixth Bhavas fall in Gemini. The seventh Bhava falls in Cancer. The eighth Bhava falls in Leo. The ninth Bhava falls in Libra. The 10th Bhava falls in Scorpio. And the 11th and 12th Bhavas fall in Sagittarius. So, the important thing is these are points. They're not spheres. They're not big realms that a planet can fall in, as this chart would show. Okay? That's why if you try to make predictions for placements based on this Bhava chart and consider Mars in the 9th from the ascendant here, you're going to have things are not going to work out. When we're considering planetary positions relevant from any point or other planet, we use the Rasi chart. That's one of the most important uses of the Rasi chart. Okay? When we want to look at things like conjunctions, we use the Rasi chart, not the Bhava chart. So, Sun, Mercury, and Venus are in conjunction. They're all in Scorpio. In the Bhava chart, Mercury and Venus are in the 11th Bhava, which has a house cusp of Sagittarius, and the Sun is in the 10th Bhava with the house cusp of Scorpio. They're in different houses, but are they conjunct? Don't look here. Look here. Yes, they're conjunct. So basically the point I'm making is never use this Bhava chart to find planetary positions. That's the task, the duty of the Rasi chart, to find planetary positions. Okay? And we also want to place the Bhavas in there too. So now we've got all the Bhavas in the Rasi chart, so we can see where they're at and see who they're ruled by. Okay? So on this chart, the 9th Bhava over here is Libra. That means if we want to read about the father, we want to read from Libra, Bhava number 9. If we want to read about the mother, we go to the 4th Bhava and read that from Taurus. Okay? And this is really interesting. From Taurus, the 7th house is Scorpio. Venus, the Lagna Lord of the Mother, is in Scorpio in the Rasi with Mercury and the Sun. Okay, this would make the mother very, mother's life very involved with 7th house relationship marriage affairs. Okay, well, as it turns out, the mother of this person has got their Lagna Lord in the 7th house with Mercury and the Sun. Okay, just like you see here, you see a very similar dynamic. Okay, so, and you'll see that when you use the right Baba point, that point to show this is the mother, that points the mother. Okay, and we need to do that for all the other houses. Okay, for, anytime we want to read something concrete, we look at the Baba. So we have to find the right reference point. Now this is the 4th. Aries is the 4th from the ascendant when we're looking at a relative position from the ascendant. But when we're talking about the 4th Baba being a concrete existing thing that indicates the mother, we have to go to where the number 4 is, that 4th Baba cusp, and look at Taurus. But we want to look at those things in the context of the Rasi chart. So this is a class on Rasi. So the focus is planetary positions and positions from each other, positions from other Baba cusps, positions from the ascendant point are all done via Rasi chart. So from the 4th cusp, Mars is in the 6th. From the 4th cusp, Sun, Mercury, and Venus are in the 7th. Okay? From the 1st cusp, Saturn and Jupiter are in the 7th. That's how you want to look at it. You don't want to say, well, from the 4th cusp, which is Taurus, Mercury and Venus are in the 8th. See, from Taurus, Mercury and Venus fall in the 8th? No, that's wrong. From Taurus, Mercury and Venus are in the 7th. So any spatial relationship, you look at the Rasi chart. That's the primary purpose of Rasi charts, helping us see these spatial relationship between different points and planets, and it's the foundation or the container, the reference plane where we place everything else for further calculations later. The other thing where Rasi charts are important is in Jaimini Sutras, obviously, most things are done via Rasis, and also most yogas are Rasi based. And don't really do a whole lot of, don't deal a whole lot with Baba. So those are the 3 things we use Rasi chart for. The important thing with the Rasi chart is to keep in mind that it is a Varga, meaning it's a chart of 12 signs, of 12 zodiacal signs, with the planets and the Baba cusp placed in them. And we need to do that for each and every Varga. So for instance, Navamsha represents spouse and your marriage, the path that you're on, the ashram you choose, the marriage ashram versus another type of ashram. Now, if we want to read this person's marriage, we have to say, okay, Cancer is their Lagna. And we can check the planetary positions from that Lagna. And we can see that all planets from that Lagna are in angles or trines. Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury are in angles. Mars, Venus, and Moon are in trines. That's wonderful. There's no planets in difficult houses from the Navamsha Lagna. Right there, that lets us see this person's going to do a bit better in relationships, have some less travesties in their relationship. Okay? Now, let's look at their mother's marriage, for instance. Okay? From their mother's point of view, we got to go to number 4. That's the mother. And to read her marriage possibilities, we have to look at the Navamsha, read the Navamsha form, the mother over here. Just like we would look at the mother's body and where her body's focused, meaning relationships over here, by looking at the number 4. So each Varga chart, depending on the person we're looking at, we need to read that from the right bhava point, meaning from the right concrete existing thing. So we wouldn't, just as we wouldn't go and read the mother from Libra in the Navamsha, we would instead read it from Pisces where the fourth cusp falls. Same with the Rasi chart. We don't just go to Aries automatically for Capricorn to read about the mother. We go to Taurus because that's where the fourth cusp falls. So the Rasi chart is not for determining the concrete existing points, meaning fourth Rashi from the ascendant being the mother. No, that's not what it's for. It's used for seeing spatial relationships between the planets and other points. To find the concrete existing things, we have to calculate out the 12 different bhavas, and then we place them in the Rashis so that we can see the aspects to those points, and so we can see the conjunctions to those points. So here we see that to the 10th cusp, we got Venus, Mercury, Sun conjunction. So these planets are going to help or hinder the 10th bhava because they conjunct it. Okay, so to look at this person's success, which is 10th bhava things, the concrete level of success they may have, we have to look at this point, Scorpio. We don't look at Libra, which is the 10th from the ascendant, and see that Mars is there. Instead, we see that Sun, Mercury, and Venus are there to read it. Okay? And obviously, those would give two different predictions. The right prediction will be the prediction based on Scorpio here, where the 10th cusp is falling. So, we need to find those bhava cusps for that. The Rashi chart is not for finding bhava points. Okay, bhava is that concrete existing thing, and it's a point, just like the ascendant. It's not a space. That's why we don't want to use this bhava chart to find out what space the planet's in. Okay? I haven't found that to work, and there's been times I've tried it and it's always failed. Okay? But calculating out the bhava cusp like this works perfectly. Works better than just using the Rasi chart without bhava points. And where in most cases you'll be using, or in lots of cases you'll be using the wrong bhava point if you don't actually calculate those bhava points and put them in there. Okay? So you really don't ever really need to look at this bhava cusp chart unless you just want to see conjunctions to bhava cusp. So you can see that here you see that Capricorn's the first, Aquarius is second, Aries is third, Taurus is fourth, fifth is Gemini, sixth is also Gemini, and so on. You see the same thing as these Roman numerals show in the Rashi chart. My preference is to look at those things in the Rashi chart, and I don't have a need to see these separate things because you can just see it easier here. You see the bhava point with K2. You see the bhava point with Saturn and Jupiter. The bhava point, ninth bhava, with Mars, and so on. And you can see that here. You can see this is the ninth. Libra is the point, falls in Libra, and Mars is there in Libra as well. But it's just not as good of a tool because, for instance, it can be a bit misleading. If the Sagittarius is holding the 11th and 12th cusp, so you can see 11 and 12 are Sagittarius. Mercury and Venus are in Scorpio though, so they're not conjunct Sagittarius. They're not affecting Sagittarius. But in the bhava chart, they look like they're in Sagittarius. And so you might assume they're conjunct Sagittarius. And the reason they might look that way is because they're between the 10th cusp and the 11th cusp. So the degree of the 10th cusp, in fact, let's show you here. The degree of the 10th cusp is 649 Scorpio. And the degree of the 11th cusp is 048 Sagittarius. Now, the difference, if we find that space, which is roughly 24 degrees, and we divide it by 2, then the middle point is going to become 1849 Scorpio. So 1849 Scorpio is sort of the middle point of the, was it Scorpio? Hold on. Yeah, 1848 Scorpio is the middle point of the, or the end point of the bhava, if you try to measure the bhava as a space. Well, Sun is on one side of 1848 Scorpio, and Mercury and Venus are on the other side. That's why Mercury and Venus get pushed into that 11th bhava, and the Sun stays in the 10th bhava. But that's all erroneous. We're never going to do that. I'll never teach you how to do that. The concept that planets can be in these unequal bhavas, I just haven't found working. Planets are only in Rashis. They can be in a Rashi, they can't be in a bhava. They're only in Rashis, and those Rashis are counted from the ascendant or from some other point or planet. But they can be conjunct different bhava cusps. So just as you can have a planet conjunct a Lagna point, you can have a planet conjunct any other bhava cusp. And you see that using the Rashi chart. So we never need to look at this. We're going to get rid of that. No reason to ever look at that. Some astrologers try to use that. I haven't had any luck using that type of bhava system for saying this planet's in this chart. And people I've known who've tested it thoroughly, even the Greek astrologers, tested bhava systems and bhava placements that way versus Rashi placements. And they found that the Rashi placements worked a lot better. The ancient Greeks actually used those old Rashi placements, just like the Hindus, for determining things. So we want to use Rashi placements for determining from where, how many, 5th place, 6th place, whatever. But we want to do that in conjunction with calculating the entire chart. Calculating the entire chart means calculating the Lagna point, but also calculating out the points for all the other bhavas and placing those in the Rashi chart and the different Vargas. That's why you see these in all the Vargas. And realize that those things are points. Just like the planets are on one point in the zodiac, these bhavas, these concrete existing things, are also in one point. And if you do that, you'll be using the Rashi chart and the bhava points in a way that works and doesn't cause contradictions that make you not know what to predict. Okay? And when they face those contradictions, most astrologers always follow with the Rashi chart because it's the one that works. The bhava chart doesn't work in that concept. Okay? So that's what we use the Rashi chart for. There'll be some more videos on Rashi charts down the road, including using the deities of the different Rashis and so on. But for now, in order to help prepare you for some more advanced predictive courses, it's very important that you understand the use of the Rasi chart and the things not to use it for. Most importantly, the thing you don't use it for is for finding bhavas. So Aries is not the 4th bhava. The 4th bhava happens to fall in Taurus. It's a point in Taurus. And that's what you have to remember. So we'll get into some advanced predictions with using these bhava points and Rashis very shortly in future videos. Thank you.